The darkness of space stretched endlessly, punctuated by the massive silhouettes of Xyrax warships. Their metallic hulls gleamed with a cold, menacing light that had become a symbol of destruction across multiple star systems. For generations, the Xyrax Collective had been a nightmare for countless civilizations, a relentless force that consumed and eliminated everything in its path. Jay Park sat in the dimly lit research center, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the incoming transmission. The room was silent save for the gentle hum of advanced computer systems. Outside the window, Earth looked peaceful, unaware of the impending doom that approached. The transmission was crystal clear. A cold, calculated voice delivered an ultimatum that had been repeated countless times before to other civilizations. Surrender, or be destroyed. Humanity had 72 standard galactic hours to make its choice. Hana Kim stood behind Jay, her fingers nervously tapping against her tablet. She had spent years studying alien communication patterns, and something about this message felt different. The Xyrax always spoke with absolute certainty, but this time there was a subtle undertone of something else, perhaps curiosity, or something closer to concern. "They don't understand us," Hana whispered, more to herself than to Jay. The research center was a hub of controlled chaos. Scientists, military strategists, and communication experts worked in tight clusters, their faces a mix of fear and determination. Unlike previous civilizations that had received similar ultimatums, humans weren't preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight. Jay pulled up historical data about the Xyrax Collective. The records were brutal. 27 different species had been completely eliminated in the past century. Each civilization had tried traditional defense mechanisms, massive battleships, advanced weapon systems, diplomatic negotiations. Each had failed spectacularly, but humans were different. They had something the Xyrax couldn't comprehend: an unpredictable combination of innovation, adaptability, and a strange psychological resilience that defied normal strategic calculations. In a small conference room, military commanders reviewed potential defense strategies. Sung Choi, a veteran strategist with piercing eyes and a calm demeanor, spread out holographic maps of potential conflict zones. His team wasn't just planning a defense. They were planning a response that would shock the entire galaxy. The global communication networks were abuzz. Social media, military channels, scientific research groups, everyone was preparing in their own way. Some people panicked, but most showed a remarkable sense of unity. Governments that had been historical enemies now worked together, sharing resources and information. Wu Li, a young communication specialist, had been monitoring alien communication frequencies. He noticed something unusual. The Xyrax transmission wasn't just a standard threat. There were subtle encryption layers that suggested they were gathering more information about humanity than they were letting on. "They're studying us," Wu told his team. "But they're missing something fundamental about human nature." Outside, satellites and space monitoring stations tracked the approaching Xyrax fleet. The numbers were overwhelming. Thousands of warships that could obliterate entire planetary systems in minutes. Each ship was a technological marvel, equipped with weapons that could destroy planets with a single strike. Jay continued analyzing the transmission. Hidden within the cold mathematical language was something he found fascinating: a hint of miscalculation. The Xyrax had mathematical models for civilizational resistance, but humans were about to prove that mathematics couldn't predict human spirit. In research labs around the world, scientists worked on projects that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. Quantum communication systems, adaptive drone technologies, psychological warfare algorithms, everything was on the table. The 72-hour countdown had begun. The Xyrax believed they were approaching another routine elimination. They had no idea that this time they had made a critical error. Humanity was not going to be another statistic in their galactic conquest. They were about to become a legend. As the first Xyrax ships entered Earth's solar system, a strange sense of anticipation filled the air. This wasn't going to be a story of extinction. This was going to be a story of survival, and survival as humans would soon prove, looked nothing like what the Zyrax expected. The first wave of Zyrax scout ships approached Earth's orbital zone, expecting the typical signs of a soon-to-be-conquered civilization. Instead, they encountered something entirely unexpected. J. Park's research team had been working on a revolutionary communication system that defied conventional understanding. Unlike traditional communication networks, this system used quantum entanglement, a technology so advanced that it could transmit information instantaneously and remain completely undetectable. Sung Choi stood in the military command center, watching the initial defense mechanisms come to life. Gone were the massive battleships that other civilizations had relied on. In their place, thousands of small, interconnected drones began to move with an almost living intelligence. Each drone was more than just a piece of technology. It was part of a collective network that could think, adapt, and respond faster than any traditional computer system. The Zyrax scanners couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. These weren't random machines. They were moving like a single organism. Hana Kim monitored the communication channels, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. She had discovered something remarkable about human technology, its ability to learn and adapt in real time. While other civilizations had fixed defense systems, humans had created something dynamic, something alive. The first Zyrax scout ships fired their initial probing shots. Normally, this would be a test to measure a civilization's defensive capabilities, but nothing worked as expected. The human drone network seemed to anticipate every move, shifting and changing with impossible speed. Wu Li noticed something peculiar in the alien communication frequencies. The Zyrax were confused. Their standard invasion protocols were falling apart, and they couldn't understand why. In research labs across the planet, scientists were pushing the boundaries of what was possible. One team had developed adaptive materials that could change their molecular structure in milliseconds. Another had created communication algorithms that could predict and counter alien technological approaches. The military had transformed its entire strategy. Instead of large, slow-moving battleships, they had created a network of small, intelligent units that could work together seamlessly. Each drone was essentially a tiny thinking machine that could make split-second decisions. Sung Choi's strategy was simple, but revolutionary. Instead of fighting the Zyrax with traditional warfare, they would use their own technological strengths against them. The drones weren't just weapons. They were living, learning systems that could adapt faster than any computer. J. Park's quantum communication system played a crucial role. It allowed instantaneous sharing of information across the entire defensive network. What one drone learned, all drones instantly knew. The result was a defense system that was more like a living brain than a traditional military network. The Zyrax scouts began to retreat. Their initial scans showed something impossible, a civilization that didn't fight like any they had encountered before. Humans weren't following any standard defensive pattern. They were creating something entirely new. In orbit, the first real test began. Zyrax warships launched what they believed would be overwhelming attacks, but human technology responded in ways that defied traditional warfare. Drones would split, merge, redirect, and counterattack with an intelligence that seemed almost supernatural. Hana Kim watched the initial encounters with a mix of excitement and scientific curiosity. This wasn't just a defense. It was a complete reimagining of how technology could work. Humans weren't just defending themselves. They were revealing an entire new approach to technological warfare. The global communication networks buzzed with a strange mixture of fear and hope. People weren't just watching a potential invasion, they were witnessing something historic. Humanity was showing the galaxy that they were more than just another species to be conquered. As the first wave of Zyrax ships retreated, a clear message was sent. Humanity was not going to be another statistic in their galactic conquest. The Zyrax collective had made a critical error. They had underestimated human capability, human creativity, and human spirit. And that mistake would cost them everything. The first real battle began like a dance of technological chaos. Zyrax warships approached Earth's defense perimeter, expecting another quick conquest. Instead, they found themselves in a nightmare of human innovation. J. Park watched from the command center as thousands of small drones moved with an intelligence that seemed almost alive. They weren't just machines. They were a living, breathing network of technological innovation. Each drone communicated instantly, adapting faster than the Zyrax could process. Coral Vex, the Zyrax fleet commander, stared in disbelief at his monitoring screens. Human defense systems defied every known military strategy. The drones moved like water, splitting, merging, redirecting with impossible speed and precision. Sung Choi had designed the defense network to be unpredictable. Traditional warfare relied on fixed patterns, but human technology broke every rule. One moment, the drones would appear scattered and weak. The next, they would combine into devastating attack formations that tore through Zyrax ship defenses. The first wave of Zyrax ships approached with confidence. Their weapons could destroy entire planetary systems in minutes. But against humans, nothing worked as expected. Laser attacks passed through empty space where drones had been seconds before. Missile systems found themselves redirected, their own weapons turning against them. Hana Kim monitored the communication frequencies. She discovered something extraordinary. The human drone network was learning with each passing second. What worked against one Zyrax ship would be countered in the next encounter. The humans were evolving faster than the aliens could adapt. In space, the battle looked like a complex dance of light and movement. Small human drones darted between massive Zyrax warships, attacking weak points with surgical precision. They weren't fighting like a traditional military. They were fighting like a single intelligent organism. Wu Li tracked the psychological impact of the human defense. The Zyrax had conquered dozens of civilizations, always with the same overwhelming force. But humans were different. They turned the invasion into a complex game of strategy and unexpected movement. The quantum communication system developed by Jay's team proved to be a game changer. Information spread across the entire human defense network in microseconds. What one drone learned, all drones instantly knew. The result was a defense system that thought and adapted faster than any computer. Coral Vex began to realize the fatal mistake. Humans weren't just defending. They were completely rewriting the rules of space warfare. Their technology didn't follow any standard pattern. It was alive, intelligent, constantly changing. Massive Zyrax warships found themselves surrounded by swarms of small human drones. These weren't random attacks. Each movement was calculated, each strike precisely planned. The drones worked together like a single brain, anticipating and countering every Zyrax strategy. The global human communication networks buzzed with a mixture of fear and hope. People watched live feeds of the battle, witnessing something unprecedented. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were proving themselves to be a force nobody had expected. Sung Choi's strategy became clear. Instead of matching Zyrax's technological power, humans were using something entirely different: adaptability, creativity, an ability to think beyond traditional limitations. Each drone was more than a weapon. It was a thinking, learning unit that could make split-second decisions. As the battle continued, the Zyrax fleet began to break. Their perfect mathematical approach to warfare was falling apart against human unpredictability. What worked in one moment would fail in the next as human technology continued to evolve and adapt. Jay Park watched the defense network with a sense of scientific excitement. This wasn't just a battle, it was a complete demonstration of human potential. They were showing the galaxy that technological superiority wasn't about raw power, but about intelligence, creativity, and the ability to adapt. The first major engagement was ending. The Zyrax had expected another quick conquest. Instead, they found themselves facing a civilization that would change everything they understood about warfare. Humanity had just sent a clear message to the galaxy. We are not just another species to be conquered. We are something entirely new. News traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Whispers became shouts and rumors transformed into documented evidence of humanity's unexpected resistance. The Zyrax collective's seemingly unstoppable conquest had been challenged by a species they had completely underestimated. Hana Kim sat in the International Communication Center, watching as messages started pouring in from other marginalized species. They weren't just sending messages of support, they were asking to understand how humans had done the impossible. Jay Park discovered something remarkable. The quantum communication network they had developed wasn't just a defensive tool, it became a bridge connecting different civilizations that had been isolated and oppressed by the Zyrax collective for generations. Sung Choi recognized the strategic opportunity. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were creating a new galactic alliance. Small civilizations that had lived in fear for centuries now saw a different possibility. They saw hope. The first alien diplomatic missions arrived cautiously. Representatives from 6 different star systems came to Earth, expecting to find a technologically advanced, but ultimately fragile civilization. Instead, they found something entirely unexpected, a species that had turned warfare into an art of adaptive intelligence. Wu Li managed the initial communication protocols. Each alien delegation was surprised by human approach. They weren't met with military displays or aggressive posturing. Instead, they found scientific teams ready to share knowledge, military strategists willing to explain their defensive technologies. The Zyrax had a critical weakness nobody had previously recognized. They understood technology, but they couldn't comprehend creativity. Humans introduced concepts that broke every mathematical model the Zyrax had developed over centuries. Small civilizations began sharing their own stories. The Krelin species, nearly destroyed decades ago, explained how the Zyrax had systematically eliminated their advanced technology. Humans listened, analyzed, and started developing collaborative defense strategies. Quantum communication networks expanded rapidly. What started as a human defensive technology became a galactic communication platform. Information could now be shared instantly across vast distances, breaking the communication monopoly the Zyrax had maintained for generations. Jay's research team discovered something extraordinary. The adaptive drone technologies could be modified to help different species develop their own defensive capabilities. It wasn't just about human survival anymore. It was about creating a collective galactic defense. Sung Choi worked with alien military representatives, showing them how human strategies emphasized adaptability over raw power. Traditional warfare relied on overwhelming force. Human approach was about intelligence, quick thinking, and constant adaptation. The Zyrax watched in growing horror. Their carefully constructed galactic control was falling apart. Civilizations they had kept isolated were now communicating, sharing technologies, developing collaborative strategies. Hana Kim noticed the psychological transformation happening across different species. Fear was being replaced by something more powerful, collective hope. Civilizations that had been defeated were now discussing resistance, sharing survival strategies. The quantum network became more than a communication tool, it became a symbol of collective resistance. Each species added its unique technological understanding, creating a defense network more complex than anything the Zyrax had encountered. Small technological innovations began emerging. The Krelin shared energy conservation techniques. Another species contributed advanced material sciences. Humans provided adaptive communication and defense strategies. Each contribution made the collective stronger. Alien representatives were stunned by human approach. They weren't just offering help. They were creating a collaborative platform where every species could contribute and benefit. It was a fundamentally different way of thinking about galactic interaction. The Zyrax collective's communication channels began showing signs of internal confusion. Their perfect mathematical approach to galactic domination was being challenged by something they couldn't calculate: human creativity and collaborative spirit. As the galactic turning point continued, one thing became clear. This was no longer just a human fight. This was a collective resistance that would reshape galactic civilization forever. The game had changed, and the Zyrax were about to learn that mathematical perfection could never defeat creative collaboration. The final confrontation began with a silence that felt like the calm before a massive storm. Thousands of species watched, their collective hope focused on a single point in space where humanity would make its definitive stand against the Xyrax collective. J. Park's quantum communication network had transformed into something beyond a simple defense system. It was now a living, breathing galactic intelligence that connected hundreds of civilizations. Each species contributed its unique technological understanding, creating a defense network more complex than any single civilization could have imagined. Sung Choi stood at the center of the human command station, his eyes scanning the holographic displays that showed the approaching Xyrax fleet. This wasn't going to be a traditional battle. This was going to be a complete reimagining of galactic conflict. The first wave of Xyrax ships approached, carrying the confidence of a civilization that had conquered countless worlds. But something was different this time. The space around them seemed to shift and change in ways that defied traditional understanding. Hana Kim monitored the communication frequencies. The quantum network wasn't just sharing information, it was actively predicting and countering Xyrax strategies in real time. Each alien species contributed its unique understanding, creating a defense that was more than the sum of its parts. Wu Li watched as the adaptive drone networks began their complex dance. Thousands of small units moved with an intelligence that seemed almost alive. They weren't just fighting, they were solving a complex three-dimensional puzzle of warfare. The Xyrax fleet commander, Coral Vex, realized too late that this was no ordinary resistance. The humans and their allies had created something entirely new, a collective intelligence that could adapt faster than any single technological system. Massive Xyrax warships found themselves surrounded by a network of drones that seemed to think and move like a living organism. Where traditional defenses would have collapsed, this network anticipated, redirected, and countered with impossible precision. The battle became a complex dance of technological innovation. Human adaptive technologies, combined with alien energy systems, creating defense mechanisms that the Xyrax had no way to understand or counter. Each moment brought a new surprise, a new way of thinking about conflict. Jay's quantum communication system proved to be the ultimate weapon. Information traveled faster than light, with each drone and ship sharing knowledge instantaneously. What worked in one moment of the battle was instantly communicated and adapted across the entire defensive network. Alien species watched in amazement. This wasn't just a human victory. This was a collective triumph of creativity over mathematical precision. The Xyrax had always believed in perfect, calculated strategies. Humans showed them the power of adaptive intelligence. Sung Choi's final strategy became clear. Instead of destroying the Xyrax fleet, they were dismantling their entire technological and strategic approach. Each attack revealed the weakness in the Xyrax's rigid mathematical understanding of warfare. The quantum network began to do something unprecedented. It wasn't just defending, it was actively rewriting the rules of galactic interaction. Civilizations that had been isolated for generations were now communicating, sharing, collaborating. As the battle reached its final moments, the Xyrax fleet began to break apart. Their perfect calculated approach was falling apart against an intelligence that could think, adapt, and evolve faster than any computer system. Hana Kim watched the final moments with a sense of scientific excitement. This was more than a victory. This was a complete transformation of how civilizations could interact and defend themselves. The last Xyrax ships disappeared, not in a blaze of destruction, but in a complex dissolution that seemed to reflect their complete strategic collapse. Humanity had done more than defend itself. It had shown the galaxy a new way of thinking about conflict, collaboration, and survival. As the quantum communication network hummed with collective celebration, one thing became clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had not just survived. They had reimagined what was possible.